Hi everyone and welcome back to our HaPi Podcast, Healthcare and Pharmaceutical Insights. This series is going to be looking at launch excellence, and in this series I'm going to be speaking to a number of guests who all have experience of launching either products, companies or services, and will be able to offer some valuable advice to you if you're in that space. So sit back, relax and enjoy. Welcome back everyone to another episode of HaPi, Healthcare and Pharmaceutical Insights podcast and forum, and I'm delighted to have another guest along with me who I've done some work with in the past, more on a recruitment capacity, Steve Brockie. Steve, welcome. Thanks for giving me some of your time today. Steve and I know each other relatively well. Last time we bumped into each other was Pharmacy Show, wasn't it? Pharmacy Show down in Birmingham. So a long time ago, and you very kindly have agreed to give me your time here today. So we're on to talk a lot about launch excellence, which is our current series. Steve's got some experience with that. But before we go into that, do you want to just give us a quick intro, Steve, to who you are and what you're doing just now?
Sure, yeah, thanks, Colin. So I'm Steve Brockie, and I'm the CEO of A.Vogel Limited. I think just to kind of give you a bit of background to myself, I studied pharmacology at university, and I quickly realised, well, it was actually during a placement at SmithKline Beecham in my honours year, that one page of detail on how a drug works was fascinating to me, but that took maybe hundreds of people 10 to 15 years. So to be a small cog in the wheel in research wasn't for me. So I quickly joined the world of business. I joined Ethicon at Johnson & Johnson, and I worked there in the international department for 17 years, which was a great experience, actually. Great time. Worked across all the franchises as they were known in J&J, so from the Ethicon sutures to the endosurgery, laparoscopic and stapling, the pure orthopedics, the Cordis cardiology, what else now, the Codman neurosurgery, the sterilisation products. J&J's got a huge range of medical devices now. I was able to cover all of those in my time there. The international side of things, we were looking after the countries where there was no local J&J office. So a lot of that would be, it was across EMEA. So it would be where the island was maybe too small to make it's not viable. So Cyprus, Malta, Iceland, a lot of countries in the Middle East and Africa. And I actually really found my niche. I loved time in Africa, and I spent a lot of time there. I was lucky in a couple of really good bosses there who were really supportive of the long-term game in Africa. So I spent a lot of time developing surgery there with the local colleges of surgery in Africa. A lot of education, a lot of training, which was a great time. But it's all things that came to an end, and they moved the export side of things out to Dubai. And at that point, I decided with a young family that wasn't for me. So I ended up joining a company down in Liverpool called Vitaflow, who specialise in metabolic and ketogenic nutrition. And the remit of my role there was to develop the business, the global business outside of the UK, which was a great time. It was great people, great products, and a great city as well, Liverpool. So I really enjoyed my time there. 5 years ago, there was a chance to come back up the road to Scotland, and I took on the role of CEO at A.Vogel Limited. And for those of you that don't know A.Vogel, it's a company in consumer health, OTC, phytopharma, natural products. We've got products across a range of different disciplines, of herbals, food supplements, devices, nasal sprays, eye drops, and I guess it's been a fantastic time as well over the last 5 years. So it's been really good.
Good. Did you live out in Africa then, Steve? Or
never lived, but travelled extensively. So I was travelling at times, maybe going out for maybe single at times. So it was great. So I was going out for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks at a time. Right. So yeah, I was probably spending upwards of 20 weeks a year in Africa, but I was going to different markets, so it didn't really make sense to live in one particular place. So I was kind of going back and forward to different locations. So
different locations.
No, I loved it. It was great before I had kids, but when kids came along, it was tough being away as much as that, but great times.
Yeah, good. And then back home to Bonnie, Scotland.
Yeah.
I get a little bit of stick on this podcast for having too many Scottish people on here, but you can never have too many Scottish people on here. But good. Listen, thanks. That's a good intro, and I'm sure there'll be many people that you've worked with across the years that'll be watching and perhaps reconnecting with you as this goes out live over the next few weeks. So we're on to talk about launch excellence, is what this series is entitled. And when you and I spoke about this, you hinted that this might actually be quite good timing, because you're in a period of launch. Obviously, through your career, I'm going by the assumption that you've been involved in launch as well. So that's why I was keen to get you on, because you've got good knowledge of it, you've got good current knowledge of it, and past knowledge on it. So we're going to go through a few different questions that Steve's going to pass on his advice to us all. And launch excellence is a phrase that you and I probably heard a number of times over the years. So let me just put that to you. What does launch excellence mean to you?
Yeah, well, I think it comes down to implementing innovation. So I think when you're launching something, it's because you're innovating. So I mean, all companies across all industries are trying to innovate. I mean, we all know if you're not innovating, you're going to die as a business. So every single company out there is trying to innovate, and I think it just comes down to, when you've got some form of innovation, how do you launch that as good as you can? In all honesty, most of the time you probably are talking about new products. I mean, that tends to be where there's more focus on launches. But of course, there's always times when you're launching new business models, new routes to market, enhanced services, added value, brand refreshes, etc. But for me, I think it really comes down to launch excellence is when you're implementing innovation. And for me, I think that's when it gives you an opportunity to win in the marketplace. I think there's nothing more exciting than when you have got something that you're launching that is truly innovative and you believe you can beat the competition with.
I like that, actually. Yeah, using innovation within that, and you're right. There's nothing better, even from our perspective as a recruiter. There's nothing better than having the opportunity to talk to our clients about new ideas or something different, that'll enhance what you already have, improve what you already have, and not necessarily every time that people will buy into it, but if it's innovative, most people are willing to listen to it, and if it's slightly different from what's been done.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I think you've always got to try new things as well. And I mean, I think sometimes when you're talking launch excellence, you kind of get your mindset and that everything has to be perfect. But I think the most innovative things I've seen is companies that are not afraid to try new things. And I think you're going to be better as a company if you're trying 100 new things and getting 90 right than a company that only tries 10 new things and gets 9 right. So there's always going to be that element of failure. And I think the more you test, the more you learn, the more innovative you can become.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's been your kind of own experience of launching then? Talk us through that, maybe one or two examples that you have. What's been your own experience of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, as I've said, there's been a huge sort of variety of roles I've had across different disciplines in healthcare. And I think product launches do dominate my thinking when I talk about sort of launch excellence. And if I go back to sort of a time at J&J, there was a big trend at the time to use devices to sort of deliver targeted drug delivery systems. So I'm thinking things like the Cypher eluting drug stent, things like Vicro Plus antimicrobial suture. These were big launches at my time at J&J. And I think it was different there because at J&J, there was obviously a big machine behind you. And I never got involved in speaking to people about submitted forecasts, but I was never involved in the manufacturing or the product development side of things. It was really sort of implementation at the marketplace. I think the other big thing at J&J was that the surgeon or the cardiologist or the healthcare professional, they carried a lot of weight in terms of the decision-making process, in terms of that purchase. So a lot of the effort and attention was focused on the healthcare professional. Now that did decrease in time as you start to see more of the non-clinical stakeholder increasing in their influence, and there was a lot more investment made from the company on things like health economics to try and sort of justify the new technology. So I think that was an interesting thing where the sort of clinical and the non-clinical stakeholder were really the most important when I was at in medical devices. When I moved into sort of specialised nutrition, it was the same. The clinician or the dietitian was very important, and there was obviously the elements of funding, the payer behind that. But the biggest difference there was the patient themselves has a real say when it comes to sort of specialised nutrition. They're taking something every day of their life, and they need to be able to comply with whatever it is they're taking. So we launched a product there called PQ Sphere, which did unbelievably well. And again, the campaigns we had around the patient were really important. And then I guess moving on now to what I'm doing now, you're seeing that the patient or the end consumer is absolute king. I mean, they're the person who's deciding what OTC remedy or product they're taking. And I think that's what we're seeing is a lot of focus on the end consumer where I am now. We're launching a product called Sleep Well, which I think we're really excited about. And it's, I think in this kind of space, it's always a chicken and egg situation about get your distribution up before you invest in marketing. But the marketing really is focused on the end consumer. So I think that's kind of maybe the main differences in terms of who the stakeholders are across these different disciplines.
See, in your role just now, I know that's not necessarily exactly in terms of what our pre-planning was for this discussion today, but I'm sure you'll be able to answer it. But at what stage, because you're talking about the new product, your new products coming out just now, Sleep Well. So at what stage do you start getting made aware that this product is coming and it's time for you to share that within the wider company at obviously Irvine and across the UK?
Yeah, I mean we have before we actually sort of launch kind of product concepts, we have brainstorming sessions where we get together, international team, and we look at where the sort of unmet needs are. We look to see where we can sort of identify areas of opportunity, and that basically what kickstarts kind of different projects. From there, they sort of look at the development team will look at different concepts. A lot of them don't get off the ground because it's not feasible or the idea is not possible, but that goes in it. Obviously there's different gates along that product development sort of pathway. Sometimes it'll fail at the sort of manufacturing stage. Sometimes we'll realize the regulatory requirements are too tight for it to go ahead. But I think you kind of get, you do get maybe 2 years, maybe 18 months before we're launching a product, we will know pretty sure it's coming. And we've got plenty of time to sort of lay the ground in terms of our sort of marketing and launch campaign.
And that's key, isn't it, for any company to have a good pipeline of ideas of products coming through? As you say, not all of them will come to fruition, but if you're joining a company and in our sector, you want to know that there's a pipeline of products coming through, that there's ideas always there, and it's healthy. Might not always come to the point where you're going to be marketing it, but
no, I mean, definitely. And I think every company is striving for, as I said before, innovation and the sort of the new and different products you can bring to the market. I mean, I would much rather have lots of products where some fail than have fewer products where everyone's a hit. So I really sort of we try and encourage that kind of mindset that we're trying to sort of really be creative and drive things along. But equally, you don't want too many products to fail either, because then you end up in a situation where you kind of the brand is tarnished if that happens.
Absolutely. Yep. So what are some of the challenges then that you've seen over the years of your experience of launching?
I mean, I would say this, I put it into sort of 4 main challenges in terms of what we see. And I think the first one would be delays, like we just talked about. I think there's always delays. And I think it's always the dilemma when you're kind of planning a new product. How much time do you give for each gate in terms of development? If you give a bit more time to make sure you hit that deadline, inevitably people will take that time or you'll use up that time. So I think my experience, we're always kind of running late on products in terms of launches, whether it be at the product development, whether it be at the manufacturing side of things, at the regulatory side of things, and even at the supply chain side of things. So I think delays are inevitable. I would love to hear from someone who says they're able to launch products and not have delays.
Have a delay, yeah.
So I'd say that'd be the first one. Second one I would say would be negativity. Now, I think when you're looking at sort of launching a product, you've got to really manage your stakeholders, your internal stakeholders, and to make sure you obviously focus as a team. You also need to manage and identify your external stakeholders. And I think I can think of many examples where you're launching a new product and you're bringing change. With any change, there's always resistance. So, I mean, quite often it can be internal. You like to think everyone in the company is on board with what we're trying to do, but very often there might be a salesperson who's saying, that's far too expensive. I can't justify that price. And you've really got to manage that individual to sort of explain to them the value of what that innovation you're bringing, and make sure they don't become a negative force within the sales team, for example. It may happen because the customer is the sort of end customer believes it's too expensive as well, and they become negative, they might be quite influential in the marketplace, or the change that you're trying to implement might be too big for people, because change always becomes with resistance. So I would say negativity is a big issue there as well.
Just on that one, you mentioned, like, for example, on price. So if you set a price for it at the start, and you go out to market, and your team are coming back and going, that's too expensive, or our customers are saying it's too expensive, do you adapt to that quite quickly, or do you just try and give a bit of time for it to almost kind of settle in, so to speak?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I mean, I think in all honesty, in my experience, it's easier to reduce price than it is to increase price. So you're kind of you need to look at it carefully, because you don't want it to flop from the beginning, but you need to make sure you're getting value for your investment. Because if you're launching a new product, there's been a lot of resource put in behind making that happening. So you need to make sure that you're getting your fair value back for it. So I think we always try and make sure that if it's adding value, we're trying, and it's more expensive to produce, especially to begin with, you'll have lower volumes, so you typically will be more expensive. So I think the answer is you have to really think carefully about setting your price, but you need to be able to justify that price in the first place. Certainly, I'm not of mind to always quickly look to reduce something, but there's certain promotions and campaigns you can do, and depending on the commercial framework in terms of what that means. And I've seen it with many different products in terms of whether it's under a tender or whether it's out of pocket for an individual. There's different ways you can kind of mitigate that and sort of take that away. But I think, I mean, it's a huge issue in terms of the price and overcoming the obstacle with something new.
Yeah. Sorry, carry on. So you mentioned negativity. There was a
so I'd say delays, negativity. The third one I would say is it's a funny one, but the greater the innovation, the greater the resources you need to put in behind the launch. So I think sometimes you might have something that's truly innovative, but the amount of resources in terms of your people, time, and the money you need to spend, be it on training, be it on other forms of education, research, just even persuasion, it can be huge. So I think that's something that can be a significant challenge that to bear. Sometimes if it's just a me too or a gap in a portfolio, it's a lot easier to sort of launch that product. But when you're doing something that's truly innovative, there can be a lot more resource required. And I would say that the fourth challenge you face would be your competitor response. Now, obviously, when you're launching something new, you're hoping to gain market share. Your competitors are very much aware of what you're doing, and they will respond in some way. And it might become a price war. We've seen sort of all sorts of tactics from competitors over the years, and sometimes, without going into names, you see some sort of dirty tactics as well. But that's business, I suppose, and that's what goes on. But in a nutshell, I'd say the four biggest challenges would be delays in terms of launching, which is always frustrating. The negativity that you need to bring all stakeholders together, the more resource for bigger innovations, and the competitor response.
Good. No, that's good. That's excellent in terms of and there will be people watching this who are probably going, yeah, absolutely, I'm with you on that, and can resonate with them, and all of this. So when we're looking at trying to kind of overcome some of these challenges, now I'm not saying necessarily to give an answer on all four of them here, Steve, but
Sure.
how do you try, either as a CEO or certainly in the past in your different roles that you mentioned about at the start, how did you try and overcome some of these challenges?
Yeah. I think for me again, I think I would maybe sort of break it down into different components. So first of all, the stakeholders. I think you've really got to look. You've obviously you're building. You've got your launch plan. It's there, and then you need to look at your stakeholders. I think internally, you need to make sure that everyone's on board with the plan as much as possible. And if you've got everyone on board, you can have real focus, and it's a lot easier when you've got a strong team working towards that sort of common goal. So I think that's a really important point. You need to make sure you get on board to quell any negativity before it even comes around. If everyone's really involved from early days, that tends to be a lot easier. I think reaching the external stakeholders as well. Obviously, you identify, you should know who they are, or you might want to be more targeted in who you want to reach externally. But I think you need to really think about how are you going to reach them. Now, in different areas, it's more difficult depending on what your product is, who your stakeholders are. But not just reach them, you need to be able to engage them. You need to be able to excite them, hopefully. I mean, that sometimes is maybe a bit too much depending on what you're launching, what your innovation is. But if you can excite your external stakeholder, you really are onto a winner. Because there's a lot of noise out there, and your customers you're trying to reach are hearing this from all angles. They're probably relatively happy with what they got. They don't want change. So you need to find a way of reaching them and bringing them on board. So that's always the biggest challenge. You need to make sure that's fundamental in any plan. I think like the big challenge that I said about delays, I think they're inevitable, and you're always going to have teething problems with a new product launch. I think you can do a lot to try and anticipate the problems. You can make sure you've got Q&As ready when you launch the product. But there will always be something unexpected that you didn't sort of anticipate. I mean, I think it's just inevitable when you make such a big change. And I think there it's just really making sure the team are on board, because you want to concentrate on really resolving that issue quickly, and with transparency as well, especially when customers are involved, that they see that you're solving their solution. I think that's really important. And I think the third element I'd say would be really important is to, when you're launching a product and you're trying to be innovative, you still want to make sure you're aligning to your company brand values. So you need to make sure that product is speaking the language of your company. I mean, if your company is known for trust, or if your company is known for excitement and fun, that new product should align to those values. And I think that's really important, that you just don't go off on a tangent and you completely miss that your existing market. So I think those would be three really important things to make sure you have a successful launch.
Yeah, it's just it's tying it in with that's a good one actually to kind of wrap that question up on, is tying everything up with what A.Vogel believe. What's the ethos of A.Vogel? What's the brand message that you guys are continually getting out? There's no point in bringing a product on that's completely left field to that, and doesn't associate itself with who you are as a company.
Every product we launch, we will want to kind of have that love of nature. We also want to instill sort of curiosity. We want people to think, what is that? What's that all about? And get them to think a little bit. So we make sure that, and obviously we want to make sure we're doing things ethically in terms of sort of our supply chain and the environment that we always do as well. So these things are fundamental when we're launching products.
Good. I mean, the key thing about these podcasts, these discussions, is bringing on guys like yourself who have either experience of or currently going through launch just now, and just sharing your knowledge and your wisdom and your expertise. So the kind of final part that I try and ask all my guests to do is just to offer some advice to people just now who are probably in the either sitting there just now, taking some time out to watch this because they're going through a launch period, they're going through some of the challenges that you've mentioned there just now, or somebody who's just about to kick off a launch. Share some advice that you can offer these guys that are watching just now, maybe two or 3 points, or how many you have to try and help them.
No, I mean, I think I would say, I mean, obviously you need to build your plan. And I think I'll just go back and reiterate the points I just made about your stakeholders. Get your internal team on board. Make sure you really get them focused on the end goal. Your external stakeholders, how are you going to reach them? And that's where you can really be creative. That's where the brainstorming meetings comes about. How are you going to actually find a way of reaching your external customer, your external stakeholder? And you want to make sure, as I said before, you're finding a way. It's not just getting the message to them, but the message is resonating with them, and it's something that they can actually they act on when they hear that message. I think for me, I would always say, don't be afraid of the teething problems. There's always going to be challenges along the road. I think it's more how you deal with it. I think you could procrastinate and you could take a lot of time to make sure everything's perfect, but depending on what type of launch you're talking about. But if you're in a more fast-paced environment, I would say you need to move. Obviously, try and mitigate any issues you have. Try and cover them off so you're ready to respond. But don't worry about that. But make sure you're ready to respond if something goes wrong. And I think when you're that sort of alignment to the brand values is very important. That when you're launching something new, you want to make sure it feels like it's coming from within the company. So I think there would be the three things: that you're effectively planning your stakeholders, you're anticipating teething problems or ready to react to teething problems, and you're aligning to your company brand values.
Good, excellent. So exciting times for A.Vogel. You're just about to, as you said, launch. imminently. Don't know. You don't necessarily need to share exactly when that date is, but website address. Just remind me what the A.Vogel website address is.
Yeah, we're launching a product called Sleep Well. It's a dissolvable granule, and the formula. It took a lot of time to make the formulation actually. And it's a really interesting product. So it's got 2 plants. It's got lemon balm and lettuce extract. It's also got magnesium and L-tryptophan. Now, when we came up with the idea of having lettuce, I was like, why are we putting lettuce in a sleep product? I mean, I've had a lot of salads. Well, you probably look at me and think not that many salads, but I had a lot of salads and I've never felt sleepy after one. But what we actually do is we let if anyone knows about gardening, you let the lettuce bolt and you actually get this really thick stem that comes out the plant. And when you cut that stem, you actually get a milky sap. So it's not the lettuce leaf, it's the milky sap from the lettuce. It's been known for a long time, and the Egyptians and in America, it was actually known as the lettuce opium in days gone by. So that's one of the ingredients, which is really exciting. But it's a great product. It just dissolves. Pour the granules on your tongue. I think it's got a nice bitter orange taste. Dissolves very quickly because it's like a liquid. It kind of gets into the body and it acts a lot quicker than maybe if you're taking a big tablet.
Okay.
So yes, that's the product's actually launched. But as I said before, when you're launching products in the sort of OTC arena, it takes you a little while to get your distribution up before you maybe spend a lot on marketing and before you really go after create awareness. But it's available. It's available on our website, and we're available at a lot of our stockists out there as well. And in time, obviously, we will start to ramp up our launch plan for that. We've got a big launch event down in London at the Swiss Embassy. Obviously, with A.Vogel being a Swiss company, we're doing an event with the Swiss Embassy next week, where we've got a couple of doctors along. We're talking about research behind the products. We've got a lot of journalists and influencers attending the event. So hopefully from that, we'll get a lot of sort of media attention, and we'll start to see some success. So if anyone does have problems sleeping, please have a look at our website, avogel.co.uk.
Good, fantastic, excellent, great. We'll look forward to seeing more about it. Obviously, you and I are in occasional contact anyway, so no doubt we'll see some PR and some media around that over the next few weeks. Steve, listen, this has been really helpful. I do value you just giving me an hour of your time. I know you're a busy guy. You're a very busy guy, so hopefully you found this beneficial. Just sharing your own insights and tips, etc. And people watching this, I'm sure, have as well. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. And good to see you. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, no, thank you, Colin. It's been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, cheers.